We're going to talk about closures. This is an important concept in JavaScript and TypeScript. However, 99.999999999% of the time you're writing code, you don't even have to think about it. So it's just something that you have to know and be aware of, but you almost never have to think about it. It's very rarely that it comes, that it really impacts you. The previous owner of LearningFuze used to do mock interviews for the students, and he would always ask them, what is a closure? And that was his gauge to see how well the students were doing. And the reason he asked it was not just for his own fun, but because he had found from his students who had gone out to do interviews that it was a very common question for people to get asked in interviews. So he insisted that we know it. Well, okay, we'll teach it. And then I realized that there's some in React, there are some places where closures actually come and bite you. And while we can just say, oh, there's a lint warning, follow the lint warning and you'll be fine, I find it better to, instead of having you just do things because you're told to, that you should understand. So the purpose of this exercise is to help you understand why those lint warnings are there and what they're doing for you. Now, if you find that it's more than you wish to worry about, fine, forget it. Just make sure you follow the lint warnings and just keep in the back of your mind, oh, that warning's there for a reason. And so that's really the main thing. So I'll go through this and I'll help us understand closures. So if it ever comes up in an interview, you'll understand it. If you're in a situation where you need to understand it in the code, you'll understand what it is. And you'll have a basic understanding of where it really impacts you in writing your React code. React is the only place in all of the coding in JavaScript and TypeScript I've ever done where I even had to think about it. I wasn't really even aware of what a closure was until I got to LearningFuze and started learning more about this stuff in all the years I've been writing code. So it's kind of cool. I like it. I read all about it and I had fun with it, but it's not something that is going to be job critical. Okay. And the few places where you do need to know, if you just follow the lint warnings and say, oh, this has something to do with closures, and then just you'll be fine. So I'm just telling you that just so you'll know that this is intended to be a fun little conversation and not one that you have to get stressed out about if it's too hard for you. So anyway, let's go through the questions. So scope, we have to figure out what is scope. What do we mean by scope? And the question here says, when is scope determined in JavaScript? Do you know what scope means?
Is it like what a function, the beginning of it and ending of it, which is
Okay, that defines where the scope happens at the beginning and ending of a function. You were going to say? Scope is the process that the compiler uses to figure out when a variable or function name is referenced, where it's actually, if it legally has access to it, if it can access it, that's called scope. The scope is the places where a variable or function can be accessed. Okay. If it's out of scope, you can't access it. And if you try, the compiler will say, I don't know what you're talking about. And if it's in scope, you can access it. So that's scope. Scope is where can you access variables. So having said that, in JavaScript, when is scope determined?
When a function is declared or created.
That's a reasonably good answer. The best answer is it's determined by reading the code. We call it at code writing time. So you can read JavaScript code, and by just reading the code, you can figure out what's in scope and what isn't. Okay. There are languages where that's not true. I actually don't work with any of them, none of the popular ones, and all the popular ones, you can figure out scope by just reading the code. So in for example, function scope, you have your curly braces, everything inside of the curly brace, that's scope. If something is declared in there and accessed in there, it's in scope. Okay, so usually, scope, it happens in between the curly braces in the JavaScript. Okay. So that's that question. The reason that question is just important so we can understand what scope is, because scope plays a big deal in how we understand closures. So let's do the next one. What allows JavaScript functions to remember variables from their surroundings?
Scope.
Scope, nope. Scope is what is the rule that says whether or not it has access to it.
The closure.
But in JavaScript, it remembers the values. It remembers the variables and their values so that they can actually get the right values. And you said, Caroline,
I said that it's the closure.
the closure, exactly. It's the closure closure is the JavaScript language feature
Oh,
that allows it to remember these things. Okay.
oh,
And we'll talk about how that works. So that's what closure is. It's what allows function to remember the name, the variables and functions in their surroundings.
is it the word coming from enclosing or
Yes,
closing to it?
Yep. Yeah, it's a made up word as far as I know. It was made up by the people who invented it. I think there are other languages that have it. And whoever invented it made up, invented the capability, called it a closure, which was a made up word that was based on enclose. So it encloses the variables inside of the scope so that you can get access to it. Okay, so what values then go into a closure?
The values that the function has created for the variable, or
Anything.
the
Close. I have
function
a
that's
function.
inside of a function.
If I have a function and I'm using something legally that is declared outside of the function, that thing that I'm using goes in the closure. So what goes in the closure is all of the variables declared outside of the function. Okay, that's what goes in the closure, all the stuff that's outside of the function. It's all the outside stuff. And we call these dependencies.
Oh,
So when we say dependencies, that's what we mean. When we say we have a dependency array, what we mean is we want you to put into that dependency array the value, the variables and things that are declared outside of the function. Okay, those are dependencies. That's what goes in a closure, the dependencies.
I thought it's inside the scope.
Nope. Well, it's in accessible scope, but it's not in its immediate scope.
So,
It's not in the function scope. It's outside, declared outside the function.
so this other function can see other values.
Yeah, and we do that all the time. You've done it a zillion times already in your React code, and I'll show you some examples when we
outside
go over
the
it.
function.
All right, so now let's go on and I'll show you that so you get a better sense of it. So when is a closure created?
When we mentioned when any function is declared.
Yes, it's actually when the function is declared.
Because we declare.
Yes, so JavaScript reads the source code. When it loads a file, it reads the source code. Whenever it comes across a function definition, that's when the closure is created. So it reads the function, it creates a reference to the function, and it adds the closure to it. Okay. All right. How can you tell if there will be a closure or if there will be anything in the closure?
Well, functions are the only ones that create closures in JavaScript.
Yes. How can you tell if there will be anything in that closure?
I guess if we are using a proper state. Oh, no.
You can access it.
If it has dependencies. If it depends on anything outside of its scope, that's when the closure gets populated with stuff.
And that's why we said that dependencies usually have props and states and things that change.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I will say that the article we had you read talks about a closure as having all of the dependencies inside of it. The language spec actually says that every function has a closure, period. And, but it might be empty, might not have anything in it. But that's the way the language spec reads. But the way most people use the word closure is the way it's in that article, which means there's only a closure if there's dependencies inside of it. Okay. All right. And we're going to call this closure, this thing that has the dependencies, a backpack. I'm going to use the backpack analogy to help us understand it better. Okay. In React, what's one important case where you have to realize that the closure was created? When you're creating dependency arrays. If you put a function inside of a dependency array, you have to know if that function is going to be recreated. Okay, well, and I'll go through that and show it to you. Okay.
Can you repeat that one again?
The important case in React is when you're creating dependency and when you're filling out dependency arrays. Okay, that's the main place. Like in a use effect dependency array, that's where it can come into consideration. Okay, so that's this, and I'm going to go through the code, and we're going to figure out where the backpacks are created and what goes in them. Okay.
So you mean like the example, the backpack is outside the scope of our hand. What we have in hand is the immediate scope.
Yes.
The backpack is there.
Okay, let's look at this. Let's look at this. How many function definitions do you see on the page, on the screen?
You have one, only one.
There's one.
5.
Oh, 5. Noah said 1.
So one.
Okay, 1. Where's another one?
Line 6.
Line 6. There's an arrow function. That's the second one. Where
Line
else?
7.
Line 7. There's another arrow function. That's a third one. Where else?
Line 11.
Line 11. There's an arrow function. That's another one. Where else?
17.
Line 17. There's an arrow function. Where else? So very good. There are 5 of them. Okay.
So any arrow function, I thought the main one is the function definition. I thought it's
An arrow function is a function definition.
Uh-huh.
It creates a function. This is creating a function. It's an arrow function. It's anonymous. It's called an anonymous arrow function, but it is a function. So since it's a function, you think of every function that is declared in a JavaScript program. The JavaScript runtime creates a reference to the function and gives it a backpack. The things that go in the backpack are all the dependencies. Okay, so now we're going to go through every one of those 5 functions, and we're going to ask what goes in its backpack. Okay, function time. Let's start with the big one. With the way we decide if there's something that goes in the backpack, we look to see if it's referencing anything outside of the function definition itself. Okay, so let's look. Const time set timer. Time and set time declared inside or outside of the function?
inside the function.
Inside the function, because there are variables that are declared and created right here.
So
How about use state?
it is outside.
It's outside, so it's a dependency. It would go in the backpack. Okay. How about use effect?
Outside.
Outside, so it's
Oh, yeah.
dependency. Goes in the backpack. All right. How about timer ID?
Inside.
It's declared. Okay, so sorry. Wait a minute.
No,
Sorry.
no, it's-
Use effect. Whoa, sorry. I'm still doing the timer function. We do use effect. We ignore the nested code in here. This is just a function. And now let's go down to here. How about time? Here's a variable, time. Inside or outside?
outside.
It's no.
No, it's inside, yeah. Inside.
It's inside because it's declared here inside of this function. This function goes from here to here. Okay, it goes from here to here. Time is declared inside, so it does not go in the backpack. How about this arrow function, this set time? Well, sorry, I'm not doing,
Yeah.
I'm
What
just
is
this
inside?
arrow function. How about in here, margin left? Anything in here?
Nothing.
No, this is a object literal, so there's nothing in there, nothing, okay? So that was pretty easy. We didn't really get much. We got use state and use effect were the only ones. Okay, all right, let's do the next one. Let's do the effect function. This one starts at this curly brace and ends at this curly brace,
Okay.
okay? So let's look, timer ID, declared inside or outside of this arrow function?
Our ID is inside,
It's inside, yep. How about set timeout?
No, outside.
Outside, it's a global function.
Oh,
Okay.
Set them up.
So this guy's backpack will have set timeout in it, okay? All right, and then let's ignore this arrow function. And we're going to return this arrow function, so let's ignore that one. We're done, okay?
Mhm.
So this one only had set timeout in it.
Hmm.
Okay, now let's go down to this arrow function. This arrow function is declared here. And it's calling set time. Is set time declared inside or outside of this arrow function?
Inside,
Pardon?
inside.
Inside. Where? Where is it declared?
Set time. Oh, no, set time is outside.
Set time is declared up here, so it's declared outside of this function. See that?
Mhm.
Set time is declared outside of this function. So this arrow function, its backpack contains set time in it because it's declared outside of the function.
It has its own backpack,
Yes, every function has a backpack.
its own,
Its own, yes. They all have their own backpacks.
and they don't go inside of each other like the
No,
Patrio
no,
does.
no, they're not nesting dolls. Okay. Every function has its own backpack. Inside of this backpack is set time. Okay, so let's go. We missed one. Let's do the one inside of set timeout. Here's this one. It starts here and it ends there. So everything inside of here. How about set time? Is it declared inside or outside?
Outside.
Inside or outside of this function?
It
Outside.
belongs to the one on line
Outside.
7, right?
Yes, it's declared on line 5.
Oh,
Set time was declared on line 5, which is outside of this function. Therefore, set time goes in this function's backpack. Right?
mhm.
How about time?
Yeah, it's a backpack.
Also,
It's up here, so it goes in its backpack. Okay. How about console?
It's a global.
It's a global, so it's not inside of this one, so it's also a dependency. It goes in its backpack. Console log is a part of console, so the time is, how about time?
Yeah, the same.
the same.
Yeah, it's the same as that one, so it goes in the backpack. And that's it, okay? So inside of this one's backpack, this guy's backpack was set time and time in console.
Uh-huh.
Okay, how about this one? It's clear timeout declared inside or outside of this arrow function?
Outside.
Outside, so that goes in its backpack. How about timer ID?
When ID is outside.
It's outside because it's up here. It's not inside this function, so that has one here. Do you see that?
Yes.
So everything that went into the backpack is a dependency.
Mhm.
Okay,
Can I ask a question?
yes,
So we have two functions here. The thing is, we have two arrow function in line 17. You see like the set time 0. And we have, we have the set time is inside another function, which is a function timer, which
no, yes, that same variant function is referenced here and it's referenced here. So set time goes in this function's backpack and it goes in this function's backpack.
but the thing is, if we have two functions away of each other, can they still access?
They can both, yeah, because it's legal, it's in scope. It's in scope. So you can access it and it's in scope here, so we can access it. There's nothing stopping it from accessing it. It's just the same function gets put in both backpacks.
But for the variable cannot access what is inside the function,
Correct. This
if it's a variable, for example.
This arrow function can access set time, but it cannot access timer ID. Okay, timer ID is not in its scope because it's inside of this function. It can access stuff in its parent function, but it cannot access anything in its sibling function. Just like what we've been doing before, you know, we got our teenagers. So it it can't access anything inside of siblings, but it can access things inside its parent.
So this is pretty much similar to React. This is the issue I'm having.
Okay, So set time, this arrow functions backpack has set time in it, which is this one here.
Can access the.
This arrow functions backpack has set time in it and time in it. Okay, it's got both of them in there.
But cannot access um, the timer ID, cannot access it, right?
This arrow function cannot access timer ID. Nope.
It's because it's
Because
inside
it's
the
inside
arrow
up here.
function.
Yeah, it's out of scope. Okay,
Wow.
all right, have we got that?
Is there another example like this? The
It's the
safest
next one, yeah.
where we cannot access.
Here we go.
This is a good one.
Here's
This is a
another
good
one. Identify all of the function definitions in here. How many do we see? We have counter, that's one.
Line 12.
We have the use effect here, that's two.
No, 3, 15.
15, we have this is an arrow function as well, that's three.
Yeah, that's one.
There's another one
Yeah, there's another one. So
right there, four. And that's it. Okay, we got four. Okay, let's go and analyze each one of them. Counter, the counter function.
The counter.
What dependencies does it have? What goes in its backpack?
What goes in?
Let's go through.
Line 4.
Use state goes in its backpack because it's declared
Data,
outside.
set data. Counter.
Use effect, get data. Is get data defined inside or outside of counter?
Inside.
Right there, it's inside.
Yeah, it goes inside the parent.
Okay, so it's inside here, so it's not a dependency. It does not go in the backpack. What about JSON?
Outside.
Outside. Data.
Yes.
Data is in its backpack or not?
It is because it's from
It's
outside.
from the parent.
It's from the
We're
data.
doing the counter function. Data is inside of the counter function,
Oh,
so it's not in the backpack. How about counter?
also no.
It's also defined here, so it doesn't go in the backpack. Okay, so these are local variables. They're accessible in the local code, local scope. They're not dependencies. They don't go in backpacks. This doesn't go in a backpack.
Well, why did you line 13 const data? You see what it,
I haven't done this one yet. We haven't analyzed this one yet. We only analyzed this outer one. This outer one, I declare these variables. So they're in my scope. I call use state, it's outside of my scope. So these go in backpack. Use effect, I have an arrow function and I have a dependency array that has get data in it. Get data is declared inside of my scope. It's inside here. So it doesn't go in the backpack. The JSON is declared outside, so it goes in the backpack. Data is declared inside and counter is declared inside, so they do not go in the backpack. So the only thing in this one, its backpack, is use state, use effect, and JSON. Okay.
You said on line, so line 12, you just skipped it.
Sorry, I forgot to say use effect. Use effect goes in the backpack. The function use effect goes in the backpack.
Backpack of
The counter function.
Okay, so but we cannot access what is inside it.
What do you mean? Access what's inside of it?
We can.
The counter function cannot access what is inside use effect.
It down in here?
Yeah.
That's correct. Parents are not allowed to reach inside of their children. Okay, children are allowed to reach out to their parents. Parents are not allowed to reach inside the children. So this is the opposite of what we usually like. Okay.
But this is the, if we understand this, we can understand and react how children parent.
Okay, maybe. Okay, that helps you. It's great. All right, so that's the counter function. Now let's do the effect function from here to here. Let's look here. Data declared inside or outside?
Outside, it's in the back.
Looks to me like it's
No, it's
declared right
inside,
here.
yeah. But why named it the same name? Got my question. Named it similar. to
Yeah,
mine.
I did that on purpose. So we'd have to think about this. It's named, it's declared here. So this one is referencing which one?
The one from line 13.
Yeah, it always references the closest one. So let's do this. Data is declared inside. So this is not in the backpack. Get data, declared inside or outside? Pardon?
Outside.
Outside, it's right here. So this goes in the backpack. Okay, data. Oh, sorry, set data. Set data
Outside,
outside, so it goes in the backpack. Data,
outside,
Inside.
inside, sorry.
because it's this one here. It's this one here. Okay, so it's not in the backpack. How about set counter?
It's
Counter,
coming from outside.
backpack.
and then-
Yes, it's in the backpack. How about this arrow function?
global,
It's in here, so we don't worry about it.
yeah,
Okay, so that's this one. This arrow function has 3 items in its backpack. Get data, set data, and set counter. Okay. All right. Where's the next function we can do? This one, this arrow function. Is pre inside or outside?
so,
If it's
so
inside.
global.
It's inside. It's a parameter, so it's inside the function definition. Okay. How about this pre? Same thing, it's referencing that one. So inside the backpack or outside? Not in the backpack.
Inside the backpack.
No, does this go in the backpack? It goes in the backpack if
No,
it's,
that's inside the scope.
it's inside scope, so it's not in the
It's not
backpack.
inside the-
Okay. All right, so this arrow function has an empty backpack, nothing in it.
Uh-huh.
Okay. All right, let's see. How about get data? Is there anything
So-
inside of here?
There's nothing inside.
Nothing. Okay, so this has no dependencies. Nothing goes in its backpack. And that was it. Okay,
What
yeah.
about line 16? So line 16, so
Line 16 is
Okay.
referencing
it's in the get
get
data,
data. But line 16 is in which function scope?
it's in line 18.
It's in this get data, this here, this is a parameter being passed to use effect. So this is inside the scope of the counter function.
Because it's a dependency.
No, it's being passed as a parameter to the use effect function. So all the parameters being passed to this function is being called inside of the counter scope. And so it's passing this parameter and this parameter. So this parameter is inside of counter scope. So you look and see, does get data, get data is defined here. It's also in this scope.
Mhm.
So this is in the scope of this function.
Mm.
Okay,
But in the same time, which is weird, like the counter cannot access what is inside use effect or cannot access what is inside get data, right?
that's correct.
Uh,
Yeah.
It's opposite way,
But how
but
come-
but the children get data. and
Children
use effect
children
access
can use,
the back-
yes, children can use variables declared in its parent. However, they have to go in its backpack. Okay. All right,
there you
yes.
go.
Sorry, I have a question. Why is the get data in the dependency? Why is it a parameter? If
Okay,
it's in the dependency.
that's a different question. I want to get
Okay.
the backpacks down and then
Oh,
we're gonna
sorry.
go back through and we're gonna redo this whole analysis. And we're gonna figure out what goes in the dependency array,
Oh, thank you.
okay? But right now, I just want to
Yes.
figure out what goes in the backpack. So I want to make sure we understand as we're reading the code, what the scope is. So this one, this data is in scope here. There's no backpack involved. It's just in the same scope. This get data is here and here. They're both in the same scope, so there's no backpack involved. This, okay, but this data here and here, they're both declared in the scope of this function, so there's no backpack involved. Get data is declared out here, so there is a backpack. Set data is declared up there, so there is a backpack for that. Set counter is declared out here. So this, and this, all 3 of those go into the backpack for this arrow function. Okay? That clear?
Yes.
Good, okay, good. Now let's go back. And the timer, and let's figure out our dependencies. So the rule for a dependency array in React is that everything goes in a dependency array that also goes in the backpack of the effect function. Okay. If it is a dependency here, it goes in the dependency array. Okay. So there's a bug here. Let's see if we can figure it out. So let's look through here, through this arrow function, here to here, and find everything that is a dependency that is declared outside of this arrow function. That makes it a dependency, which means it has to go in the dependency array. So here we go. Timer ID is a dependency.
No.
No, because it's declared inside. How about set timeout? Yes,
Yes,
it's out there, so it goes in. How about,
set time is the.
yeah, actually, to do dependencies, you have to look at everything here, okay? Because you have to look at this one's dependencies, and this one's dependencies, and this one's dependencies. In order to figure out the dependency array, you have to get all of the dependencies and all the code inside of here. So set timeout, yes. How about set time?
Yes,
Yes. How about time?
yes,
And how about console?
yes,
Time, we already said yes. How about clear timeout?
No.
yes,
Yes, because it's declared globally. How about timer ID?
no,
No. it's
Correct, because it's there. Okay, so my dependency array is empty. But that's wrong. It should have,
Should have dependency.
what did we say? Set timeout,
And time.
set time, console, clear timeout. Those are all the things that should have gone in the dependency array because these are all of the things that this depends on. Okay, right? This entire function here depends on, did I miss one?
Oh,
Set
wow.
timeout, set time, console, time, clear timeout, and I don't need to worry about timer IP.
Mhm.
Okay. So those are all the dependencies that are here in this, used inside of that use effect function.
Oh.
So those are the things that go in my dependency array.
You mean dependency declared outside the function?
Yeah, it's declared outside the function. Okay, so that's the general rule. So let me put it back like it was.
To me, no, I was just gonna say that to me, it makes most sense to then from all of those things that use effect depends on, just to take the one that carries the most functionality
Now,
from.
everything has to go in. That's the rule. If it's a dependency, it goes in.
Oh,
And I'll show you the exceptions in a minute. If it's a dependency, it goes in. That's what you
Okay,
should
okay.
think.
okay,
So if I were I'm referencing set time, it goes in. I'm referencing time, it goes in. If there was another state variable here and I reference it, it goes in and on and on and on.
oh,
Okay, it has to go there. Okay,
Can I ask you just a quick question?
Yeah.
Just quickly? If we have a you said something, two sibling function cannot access what they said, right? Two sibling function,
correct.
okay.
So this function cannot access anything inside of that function. Okay, all right. So, here's what happens when you have a bug like this, where you forget to declare your dependencies. And we're going to analyze this carefully. So here, my code starts a timer. It calls set timeout. It starts a timer, and then it sets time with that time, and then it displays the time here. Okay, and then it has a reset button. When I click the reset button, it sets the time back to 0. Okay, so the way use effect works, we're going to walk through this very carefully. We're going to erase all this stuff I put on here before.
I know I kind of like the writing instead of this projector. And it's,
kind of old stuff.
He likes the old style.
Yeah.
Okay, so here we go. I'm going to keep track of all of our state and our effects. Okay, so here we go. We're gonna execute the timer function. We're gonna mount the timer. So let's do this. What happens on line 5?
Like, we extract from the use state.
Oh, I have to pull it over farther so it can be seen on the projector. Means it's gonna get all white. Hopefully it's readable on the projector, yeah, that's there. Okay, sorry. We call
Use state,
and we pass it.
0 initial value.
Yes, our initial value of 0. So now the use state says, is this the component just being mounted? Yes.
That's the first time.
Okay, it's first time, it's just being mounted. So I create state. Here's my cache. So I'm going to create state for the time variable, right? For the time state, sorry. And I'm going to set it to what value? 0, because it's the first time. So it gets a 0. Good. And now I'm going to call use effect. What does use effect do? Okay, use effect. Said I pass it this arrow function and I pass it this dependency array. So use effect, here's my effects. Okay, so use effect says, is this the first time it's being called? Just being mounted? Yes. So I'm gonna store off the effect function, I'll just call it F, and I'll store off its dependency array, which is
An array, empty array.
empty array. Okay, good. So here we go. That's what use effect does. It's all it does. And then it puts running the effect in the event queue. Because it's the first time. The first time we always run it. Okay, now I've done the use effect. I do my return. I display this. It's going to display what? Time of 0 and put a reset button on there. Okay, good. Now we're done executing the timer function. What do?
We check the
We check the event queue. What do we find? The effect function. So let's go execute it. Okay, we're going to execute the effect function. We're going to call set timeout. We're going to start a timer. Okay, so there's going to be a timer in here. I'll just put that there. Okay, there's going to be a timer in there that runs every second, and it's got this function in it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Then we're going to return this cleanup function. So then we have a cleanup function. So we have a dependency array and a cleanup in this effect. All right, which is clear timeout with the timer ID. Okay, now we're done executing the effect, so we can take it out of the queue. And since we're done executing the effect, what do?
We
Check the event queue. What's in the event queue?
Timer.
Well, the timer. So we would sit there and we wait until eventually the timer fires. Okay, the timer fired. Let's go execute the timer function. That's this one here. So we're going to call this function and we're going to execute set time and pass it time plus 1. What's time? It got time out of its backpack and it said time is equal to 0. So it's going to call set timer with what value? Set time with what value?
+1.
With 1.
+1.
And then we're going to log time is
1.
1.
wrong.
1.
What's the value of time?
0.
0 +1.
No,
Oh, yeah, 0. Yeah, 0.
this did not modify the variable. This call did not modify the variable. React doesn't know how to do that. All it did is updated the cache. I forgot to draw the cache update. So the cache got updated to a 1. Oh, I blew it. Let's go back up. Okay, we called set time and we passed it a 1.
Wow.
So we updated the cache and
We joined the event queue.
But
triggered a re-render.
Oh,
Yeah, so we assigned one to it.
No, we put one in the cache. The time variable still has a 0 in it.
But when you render it,
We haven't re-rendered yet.
Oh, okay.
We've just called this, we've put a re-render in the queue. We have not re-rendered yet. We're still executing right here. Everything happens synchronously. Everything in JavaScript just synchronously. There is no, things don't just bounce around and execute. Everything finishes executing. Okay, the way asynchronous works is you put something in the event queue.
Because I thought you said like update the cache and trigger the re-render. Felt like trigger re-render.
It triggered a re-render, which means it put a re-render in the event queue.
Oh,
It did not run the re-render right then.
Oh.
It put the
Wow.
re-render in the, it put the render in the event queue. Okay, so that's what set time did. So now we log time is, no. Time is
0.
0 because this variable still has a 0 in it. Time is 0. That's what we logged. Then now we're done running the timer. So what do we do when we're done executing? I'm sorry, we ran the timer. So what do we do when we're done executing?
Check the event.
Check the event queue. What do we find?
Okay, now we are going to.
Now we're gonna do the render. So we call the time function, the timer function. We're gonna come here to do line 5. What do we do on line 5?
We reassign the value of 1 to the time.
We call use state, and is it the first render?
No, second.
No, so we're gonna get the value out of cache. So time variable now has the value 1. So I can put a separate time variable here. The time variable now has a 1 in it. Okay, this is a local variable. It's 1. Okay, now we're going to come down here. We're going to call use effect. And what does React say in the use effect? It says, thank you for the effect function. I'll store it there. I'll check the dependency array. I'll see if it's the same. Back up. Back up. I'm doing a re-render. No, I'm fine. Okay.
There you go.
I'm
All
fine.
functions depend.
Okay. Okay. I thank you for the function. I'm going to check the dependency array. The dependency array used to be an empty array. Now it's an empty array. Are they the same?
Well, did we carry over any dependencies?
This is it.
That's the dependency.
The last time I called it, I passed it this dependency array. This time I called it with this dependency array. They're both empty arrays. Are they the same?
Yes.
Yes, they're the same. An empty array is the same as an empty array, right? Okay, they're the same. The dependency arrays are the same. At least they have the same values. That's what I should be saying more precisely.
Yeah,
They have the same values in them. Okay, they're both empty, so that it hasn't changed. So because it hasn't changed, I do not do anything else. I'm done. Nothing, no effect gets put in the queue, nothing. All right, now I'm done with this. I do the return. I display time 1. So this is now I'm going to display time 1 and the reset button. Okay, now I'm done with the render, so I cross it off. Now I'm done executing my render. What do I do?
Check the render.
Check the event queue. Is there anything in it?
No.
It's empty. So now what do? I just sit and wait and wait and wait and wait. Okay.
I just kind of lost you when you were talking about timer. So timer.
This timer set timeout.
Yeah, I kind of lost you on this point.
I don't know what point you're talking about. We just called this function and executed those lines.
What said we wait until the timer, the set timeout change?
That was here. We had a timer in the queue and we were waiting for it to fire. That was before. The timer's gone now. It got removed. Okay. Okay. All right. Sorry. I'm going to do it again though. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So now we click the reset button.
Now we change to 0.
I'm going to go and click it. Reset, goes to 0. And look, it just sits there and 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 never changed. Okay. Not good. I I click the reset button, so I execute the on click. So I'm executing this arrow function, and I'm calling set time. What are the two things that happen?
Update the cache and trigger the.
I'm gonna update the cache. By the way, this is a local variable, got wiped out. Okay, so I updated the cache back to a 0 and
Trigger putting it in the event queue.
yep, I put a render in the event queue. And now I'm done executing. So what do I do? What do you do when you're done executing?
Wait,
No,
render.
We check the event.
you check the event queue. After you're done executing your function, you check the event queue. What do I find?
We find render.
A render. So let's go render. We're going to call use state. Says, is this the first time we've rendered?
No, it's second time.
Yes.
Right. So we just pull the value out of cache, which happens to be a 0. So now the time variable gets the value 0. We look at the use effect. Is this the first time that we've executed? No. So we're going to look at the dependency array. Has the dependency array changed?
There's no.
No. Therefore, we do nothing because the dependency array didn't change. So now we execute this and we display a 0 with a reset button.
Mm.
Now we're done rendering, comes out of the event queue. Now we're done executing. What do?
We check the event.
Check the event queue. Is there anything in it? Nope. So we just sit there and wait. Okay. Do nothing. There's nothing going, nothing happening. We're sitting there and waiting. So we had expected this. We thought this was going to make us run once a second.
Yeah.
It didn't. Okay. So how do I fix it?
We're going to add the values from the backpack into the array.
Yes. So we said if we want to put everything in here, set time, use effect, not use effect, sorry. Set timeout, console, clear timeout.
How come it worked for me even if I just put time?
I'm going to explain that in just a moment.
Okay.
Okay, those are all the dependencies that in theory need to go into here. Okay.
Okay.
So let me save. We go look. Now look, it's counting up 1, 2, 3, 4. It's working. Let's go figure out why it's working. Okay, we're gonna walk through it. It's new code, so I'm gonna erase everything. And we're gonna figure out why it's working.
This was my question actually, like why we are adding.
Okay, let's go see. All right. First time we render. We call use state. What happens? It's the first time it's being mounted, so we
update the state.
Okay, it's just being mounted, so we update the state, the cache to 0, and we return 0, and so time becomes 0. Now we call use effect. We pass it this effect function. So React hangs on to that. We pass it this
Value.
this array, the dependency array, which has a whole bunch of stuff in it. I'm going to put the time. The time will be a 0 in that spot. Okay. So then we put the effect function in the event queue. Then we return with a 0 and a reset button. Then we're done executing. So what do?
We're gonna check the event.
Check the event queue. What do we find?
A function.
The effect function. Let's go execute it. It's going to call. We're going to call this. It's going to call set timeout. So this puts a timer in the event queue. I'll call it timeout this time. Make it more clear. Going to do a timeout in the event queue. And now we're going to return the clear timeout. So we return the cleanup function. Okay. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're done executing the effect function. What do? Let's take it out of the event queue because we executed it. Now what do?
We're going to look for timeout.
We go check the event queue. The event queue has this in it, but it says don't do anything until the timer runs out. So we wait and wait and wait until the timer fires. Now After 1 second, the timer finally fires. And now we're going to execute the timeout function. So let's execute the timeout function. That's this little one right here. What does it do? It calls set time, passes it the time.
The cache.
No, this is actually from its backpack. It checks its backpack and sees what the value is of this variable because it's in its backpack. You can look it up and it gets a 0. And so it passes set time 1. So what happens in the cache?
We update.
We're
the
gonna
cache.
update.
We update the cache and
We add it to event queue.
Trigger
we add a render to the event queue. Good. Now
We keep executing.
we execute this next line. Time is
Time is 0 still.
0. Time is still 0.
Oh,
That variable is still 0. It's not coming out of
it's
cache.
not coming there yet.
No,
Okay.
it's the variable. Okay. And then we're done. So we're done executing the time, the timeout, we're done executing. Okay. Now, so we're done executing.
Oh, the timeout.
So what do we do when we're done executing this timeout function?
We're going to
Check.
clear the timeout.
We check the event queue. What's in the event queue? Render. Okay, let's go render it. Timer, we call use state. What does it get?
We have a value from the cache.
It gets the 1 from the cache, so time becomes 1. It calls use effect. And it passes it this effect function, and it passes it a dependency array. Has this dependency array changed?
Yeah,
It was 0, 0, 0. It was the 0,
was
etc.
negative.
Now it's what's time? 1. So it went from 0 to 1. Does it match?
Oh, no.
No. So it says, okay, let me put the new value of the dependency in here. And let me then render a cleanup followed by a function, an effect. Okay. So it says I already ran the effect once, so I have to run the cleanup. Okay. All right. And then we're done with the use effect and we do the rendering. We're now going to render a 1. Good. Now we get to the end of our render function. Let's take it out. We look in the event queue. What do we find? The cleanup. So it's called the cleanup. We're going to do a clear timeout. So we're going to wipe out that timeout. Fortunately, it's already gone because it fired. Okay. All right. Now we've done that cleanup. We're done executing the cleanup function. What do we do when we're done executing the function? Look in the event queue. What do we find?
We find
The effect. So let's go run the effect. What do? We call set timeout, which puts our timeout back in the event queue.
So keep doing it forever.
And then we set time to what's time now?
1 plus.
The time variable that was in its backpack is a 1 plus 1 is 2.
Update the
So we're going to call this with a 2. We're going to update the cache and
Trigger a
Trigger the
rerun.
yeah,
the event queue.
schedule a render. And now we're going to log time is 1. Yep, the time variable is still 1. So we're going to put time as 1 in the log. And then we're done executing. So we can cross it off. When we're done executing, what do we do?
Check the event queue.
Check the event queue. We see a timeout. Well, it hasn't happened yet. So let's skip it and go on. We hit the render. So let's do a render. Okay, we're going to call use state.
Update. We update the time value.
Time value gets a 2. Now we're going to call use effect. And we're going to how does my set timeout? We already did the
I don't know why.
yeah, we're going to call use effect and we're going to look at this. It's going to have a 2 in it.
Yeah.
Hold on. Who put the render in here?
You put
We
render-
did because we set time, so we triggered a re-render.
Oh, I forgot to cross it out because we've already done that.
Oh,
So we're actually sorry.
that's okay.
I'd have to go back through it again, make sure I got it right.
No, it's okay.
But we don't need to do this render. We're sitting there waiting. Now the timeout's gonna fire. Okay, so we've got, oh, well, wait a minute. Did we render with the 2? Maybe we do have to render this. We're gonna render with the 2. Okay. All right, now we're gonna wait for the timeout to fire. Timeout eventually fires, so we execute it. Let's go do it. And we're gonna call this, and we're gonna call set time. And we're gonna pass it a,
1 plus 1,000.
the time variable is,
3.
2.
2 now.
it was 2 last time we came through here, so now it's 3.
We update the
So we're gonna update this to the cache to 3, and we're gonna put a render in here. Let's put a render in. It's easy to get confused. Fortunately, the computer doesn't. Okay, so we're going to, that was the set time. Now we're gonna log that time. Now we're done executing the timeout. We look at our event queue. What do we find? So let's go do the
So
render.
we're gonna retrieve.
We're gonna retrieve a 3. And we're gonna call use effect now, this time with our function and a 3 right here. Okay, so we say yes, we gotta put it in there, so we're gonna put an effect, a cleanup, followed by an effect in the event queue, and then we're gonna render the 3. Okay, yeah,
The thing is, the time, I thought because it's in the backpack of use effect can use anything, so why you are passing time? Although it's outside.
no, time is a dependency of this use effect. So it has to be in here. You have to put all your dependencies inside of here.
So if you don't use time, it's not, the time is not.
If I didn't use time in here, then I wouldn't have to put it in.
I mean, if you don't use time in the line 12, the timer is gonna stop, it's not gonna move,
That's correct,
because you are not.
because it doesn't change.
Although it's in,
Okay.
it's in scope, like you can, looks like.
It's in scope, but it's outside of this function. It's outside of the effect function, therefore it has to go in the dependency array. That is the rule. If it's accessed inside the function, but it's outside declared outside of the function, remember, time goes in its backpack. If it goes in its backpack, it goes in the dependency array.
Yeah.
Okay? It's a dependency. It's something that it depends on that is declared outside of itself. It's a dependency.
That's not.
That's why it goes in the dependency
Something
array.
that's-
So the function timer cannot access what is inside, but the use effect can access.
Yeah, this can access stuff up in its parent.
Yeah,
So it is, but if it accesses something in its parent, it has to go in the backpack. Okay,
yeah.
okay, good. All right, so that's how this works and how it keeps
Yeah,
going and
yeah,
going
yeah.
and going and going and works.
That was really.
Okay, so now let me show you why it worked if the only thing you put in here was time. So there's this up here that says lint, disable the exhaustive depths lint rule. I put that there so that it wouldn't give the answer away. So I want you, in the instructions, it said delete this line. So let's delete that line and see what happens. This is what the code looked like.
Oh, that's
I'm
why.
gonna cut. And
Oh.
where's my warning?
Yeah, save the file.
I don't think I have to save the file. Oh, I should have checked this before I did this. Restart the server. Maybe I have to restart.
Restart your ESLint server.
I may have to do ESLint. There we go. Okay, I had to restart my lint server.
Oh.
Okay, so there we go. Now we look, I get a warning. What does this warning say? It says it has a missing dependency. Time. So the reason is time was a dependency, but I didn't put it in the dependency array. So this warning is telling me I screwed up. My function has a dependency named time. So I have to put it in the dependency array. All right, so if I put it in time, then the warning goes away. But wait a minute, what about all those other things that I had in there?
What about those?
What about those?
Yeah, we don't know, we're just concerned about time because we want to update.
That's the main value
That's the main
of
value.
that one.
Okay, look, so this is all the things that it depends on, and now I get a warning. It has unnecessary dependencies.
Yeah.
What do you mean? So here's the rule. Everything that this depends on goes in the dependency array, but there are special exceptions. Since the way React works is it checks to see if the dependency array changes before it schedules the effect. So the only things that have to go in here are things that could possibly change.
That's my fault.
Okay, so let's look at clear timeout. Clear timeout is global, defined by the JavaScript runtime. That never changes,
Mhm.
so I can get rid of it. Console.
It's going to change.
Console is declared by the JavaScript runtime. It never changes, so it doesn't have to be in here. Okay,
Oh, like the console method
Yeah.
itself never changes.
the console
Oh,
object.
Okay.
Okay, the JavaScript runtime guarantees it never changes. Set timeout. That's also a global function defined by the JavaScript runtime.
So
It never changes, so it doesn't have to be in there. Okay, so, all right. Now, the warning went away, and I have the two set time and time.
Same time, no.
But notice that if I delete set time, it still doesn't give me the warning. What? Why?
Yeah, because it's not changing.
Why not?
Because the
Only
time is a
time.
function.
It's a function. Well, it could change. How do I know it's not going to change? Use state might return a different function every time. How do I know?
Mhm.
I don't know unless I read the React documentation. And the React documentation says, I guarantee that whenever I return a state setter, it's always going to be the same reference. It will never change. And the lint rule knows that. The lint rule knows that since this is a state setter, it's never going to change. Since it's never going to change, it doesn't have to go in the dependency array.
You're only the time.
So the only thing you have to put in the dependency array is time. Got it? Okay, man. I still have a whole nother part of this exercise to do, and it's after 5 o'clock. I'm going to do it though. So let's do this one. Okay, this one will go quicker because I'm not going to walk through it quite as detailed. I'm not going to do all the walkthroughs that we did before. So here we go. I had to put get data in here because why is get data in here?
Yeah, what confusing.
Why is get data in here?
Because it's carrying the value that it's.
What are all the dependencies of this use effect function? Is data a dependency?
No.
Is get data a dependency?
um,
Where is it declared? Is it declared inside or outside?
Outside.
Outside. So is it a dependency?
Yes.
Does this go in? Does this go in
It
the?
goes in the backpack.
Does this go in the
It's outside.
backpack? Yes, get data goes in the backpack, so it's a dependency.
Dependency.
Is set data go in the backpack?
Yes.
Why isn't it in my array here?
Because you got
It's a state setter,
Data
okay? What about data?
is changing.
No.
Data
because we're
is this
getting it
one, so
from
it's
that one.
declared inside, so it's not, doesn't go in the backpack. Set counter goes in the backpack. Why
Yes.
doesn't it go here?
So.
Because it never changes.
Because it's a state setter, so it doesn't have to go here. And then pre is not, doesn't go in the backpack. Okay, so the things that go in the backpack are get data, set counter, set data and set counter. I don't need to declare because the linter knows it never changes. So I have to put get data in here. So if I actually go and flip my page to that, switch to part 2. I'm going to refresh the page, then I'm going to switch to part 2.
Gonna blow up or?
50,000 times, 60,000 times, 70,000 times.
Look how fast it is.
Look how fast it's going. Computers are fast. I'm going to close the window, okay? So I don't want it to blow up my computer. Okay. So why is that happening? We have to figure out why that's happening.
That's my question.
So here we go. We come through, we execute here, we get the data is undefined, we get the counter as 0. We schedule the use effect because it's the first render, and we put get data in as the dependency. So let me just put that much in. on the board. I'm not gonna bother with the cache right now. I'll do a different color. So get data. Oh. Thought that was- So my dependency array on the effect is get data. Now you have to remember that every time a function reference is created, it is a new reference. That's the rule in JavaScript. Every time a function reference is generated, a new reference is created. So when I say get data, I'm going to look at this function reference. I'm going to create a new reference to this function, and that's what's going to get put in here. So this is going to be get data that I put in here the first time, and then I do the render and I say I fetched. Okay. Now I'm going to run my effect. I'm going to call get data, and then I'm going to call set data and set counter. These are both going to trigger a re-render. So now, once I've done running the effect, I do a re-render. I come and I re-render. I get my new state values. I look at my effect. I do compute my dependency array. I generate a new reference. So this get data is now
New.
get data 1.
Oh,
And is get data and get data 1 the same?
no.
No, they are different references. Therefore, the dependency array has changed. Since the dependency array has changed, what happens?
Another re-render.
The effect runs.
The effect keeps
The effect
running.
runs again. So when I'm done rendering here, the effect will run. I'm going to call get data, set counter. And what are these going to do?
Re-render.
Put in a re-render. When the re-render runs, I'm going to do this. I'm going to calculate the new dependency array. I'm going to get a new reference.
So then keep-
Get data 2.
Mhm.
Are they different?
Yes.
Yes. I'm going to put I'm going to have to run the effect again. I finish rendering.
Keep
I
running.
run the effect again. I put a new render in the queue. Okay. So I just do that over and over and over again. The computer does it a lot faster than I can. Okay. Over and over and over and over and over and over again. So how do we fix that?
We're going.
I have to reference get data somehow because I need to call it. Every time I reference it, it's going to generate a new one. I'm stuck. What do I do? Okay. So let's take a look at if I get rid of this.
Can I just quick question just?
Uh-huh.
So the use effect can access the get data, but we can, because it's. in the
Yeah, even
wrapper.
though it's declared down here, that's just JavaScript magic. Functions can get referenced even if they're declared below.
So we can access.
Yeah, it can access it.
The
even though it's
name of
declared
it,
down
only
there.
the name.
Only the name, yeah.
Mhm.
Nothing inside. Okay, so if I delete this line here, then I get a warning. Let's look at this warning. The get data function makes the dependencies of useEffect hook at line 15 change on every render. We just discovered that. Move it inside the useEffect callback. Alternatively, wrap the definition of get data in its own use callback hook. Okay, so it told me what to do to fix it. But now you know why. Now you know why, because every time the function renders, we get a new reference to that get data function. Okay. So therefore, we're going to trigger another render and we're just going to go infinite. We're going to do an infinite loop. Okay. So they suggest two things. One, I can move this function up inside of here, cut, paste. So that works. Now get data. Why is get data red?
Because it's not dependent.
Because it's redeclared on line 16.
It doesn't know where it is. If you look in the scope of the counter function, there's no get data anywhere.
Yeah,
But we
Get
can use
data,
data.
get data is inside of here.
Inside the scope.
This does not have access to anything inside of its kids. Okay. Parents cannot reach inside their children. That function is
Oh.
declared inside of this.
Oh,
of
no,
this.
it's not getting the data for us from line 8 because it's inside of another function, the use effect.
Yes, the get data used to be here and counter could access it. It can't here because it's not in scope. It's inside this guy, so it's not in scope. Okay, so that's why I get that error. and I delete it. If I do that, then let me go open this again. And so now I switch to part 2 and whoo, that's it. Nice and pretty. Okay, now that's one way to fix it. Let me do this, show you the second way, which is the way that I think is the best way to do it. So you can get rid of these problems by doing this. There's nothing wrong with doing this approach, but sometimes it's awkward. Sometimes you're going to want to call this function from out here. And so it's nice to have it declared outside. So if there's a case where you have to do that, then you take this function here and you turn it into a use. It was down here. Let me see. Let me undo so I get it. Okay, there we are. Here it is. So I turn this into a use callback. The way you do that is you say const get data. I'm going to declare get data. It's a function now. I'm going to make it a use callback instead. Uh-oh.
I hit my knee on that.
Oh,
Okay, and you call use callback, which is a React function, and then you pass use callback an arrow function, and inside the arrow function is the body of your get data. So I'm going to put it here. I'm going to take this and move it up inside of there, and then I delete this guy.
so this
So
is,
now, oh, and then you have to pass it a dependency array. What goes in my dependency array? Inside the dependency array, this is an arrow function. So the dependency array gets everything that this depends on. Are there any dependencies in here? We did this already. Are there any
Data.
dependencies in here?
no, there's nothing.
No, there aren't any. So there are no dependencies in this function. So the dependency array is empty. Okay.
I thought we have outside, like, we have data, we have anything.
No, return foobar. I'm returning an object literal. So this get data, this arrow function inside of here does not have any dependencies. It only returns an object literal.
So the return affect the dependency?
This dependency array is all the things that this arrow function depends on. That's what goes in this dependency array. This dependency array gets everything that this depends on. Okay, so that's how the dependencies work. Use callback, you pass it an arrow function, and all the things that this
Depends on.
function depends on. And is there anything it depends on?
No.
No. Okay, so it's empty. So that's fine. Now I have one last problem I've got here.
So this is.
Yes.
This is where the closures are occurring, right? Because in
Uh-huh.
line 12, we are then reassigning everything from line 17's use callback into the const data.
Yes. Uh-huh. So basically the closure defines what goes in the backpack. If it goes in the backpack, it's a dependency. Okay, so here we go. This error here says get data is not defined. So in JavaScript, you can reference functions. If you say function, you can reference functions, everything. This is called function hoisting. I don't want to spend time on that. But the variable can't. I cannot reference a variable that's not been declared yet. So I have to take this use callback function that I declared and cut it and paste it up here. Okay, so now I'm set. And now everything should work. If I go back and I refresh and I switch to part 2, I get fine, no infinite loop. All right. So let's very quickly figure out why not. Render for the first time, I get my state. I call use callback, and I create this arrow function, and I give it the name get data. Okay. Now, so get data, and then I call use effect, and I pass its dependency array that get data. So, so I'm this right here. I have get data passed in here as the dependency array. Okay. Now I return the values, and I run now, since I just mounted, I run my effect. So I'm going to call get data, which is going to call the function returned here, which is going to be this arrow function, and it'll execute that, set data. Then I'll call set counter. Those will both trigger a re-render. So when I'm done executing this, I look in the event queue, I find a re-render. I go back and I do my rendering. I get my state. I call use callback. Use callback says, okay, did the dependency array change?
No.
No, it didn't.
Oh.
Therefore, I am going to return exactly the same value I did last time.
So
Oh.
Exactly the same value I did last time. That's what use callback guarantees. Use callback says, if the dependency array did not change, I'm guaranteed to return you exactly the same reference I did last time. Okay. So I get the same reference. Now I pass that reference in here to my use effect right there. And is it the same? Yes, because the get data is the same. Therefore, use effect does nothing. So it does nothing. And I render, and then I'm done. I look in the
Cool.
event queue. There's nothing in the event queue, and I sit there.
So the use callback is kind of like an empty hook, just like an empty.
Yeah.
hook.
Yeah, it's basically a use state that works on functions. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
So that's what use callback is. It just makes sure that it returns the exact same function reference every single time until the dependency array changes.
so which one is the work on function? Is the
Use callback.
oh,
Use callback is similar to state, but it's for functions. Okay,
Yes, thank you.
done. Any questions on this exercise?
No.
All right.
Can you repeat everything?
I'll stop recording and then do it.